Welcome back to the David Pakman Show. I am, of course, not David Pakman, but Benjamin Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show and host of Like It or Not for Content News, which are the studios that you see around me. David is traveling to a conference, and I am here covering for him. He'll be back for the rest of the week broadcasting remotely. There's a story that is so fascinating to me. Over the weekend, a group of psychologists, about 100 people, most of them were psychologists, gathered together and marched in New York City to bring attention to Donald Trump's mental health issues, but particularly to call for his impeachment based on the 25th Amendment, stating that he's just unfit. He's unfit to be the president of the United States. You would have seen the image on your screen of the psychologists marching. They are part of a group called Duty to Warn. Now, this goes against a long-held standard that has been in place since 1964 called the Goldwater Rule, where psychologists were told that they should not give any type of psychological analysis of public figures, particularly without examining them first. And this was put into place because of Barry Goldwater. People attempted to use his public information and his speeches to try to diagnose him and use that as a means of opposition. Well, that rule was lifted by the American Psychoanalytic Association. It was lifted specifically because of Donald Trump. And the reason they lifted it was because a lot of their members felt that they had a duty to warn Americans about the narcissistic personality disorder that Donald Trump has. Now, a lot of times when we say narcissism, we kind of throw it around casually, but in the psychological realm, it has a very specific meaning with very important implications as far as the severity of it. And there's a couple of quotes that I want to bring up on your screen now. The first one says that, quote, "We can sense the power of Trump's underlying fear that he is worthless and weak by how intensely he resists and retaliated against any criticism." And that's Harry Segal, a Cornell University psychologist. And so that was one of the first steps in moving towards this direction of making an analysis, a psychoanalysis of who Donald Trump is, but more specifically, why it's dangerous. And I think this next quote actually sums it up even better. We'll pull that up on your screen now. And this is clinical psychologist Michelle Gollan. She said, quote, "No matter how minor, he can't let anything go. We're actually suffering from his narcissistic personality. He has no empathy. You can feel it. The way he spoke about the San Juan mayor. She has PTSD and our president mistreats her. She is re-victimized. That is a narcissist." And so the group got together and they marched over the weekend, bringing attention to Donald Trump's personality disorder, but also calling for his impeachment. Now, this is not an attempt to shame people who have mental health issues. Right? Mental health issues exist across the United States of America. That does not preclude one from running for higher office. And I think that's one of the reasons of the original 1964 Goldwater Rule is because a lot of times as you bring attention to a public figure, you inadvertently bring condemnation towards people who may also have that similar type of personality disorder. However, the danger of Donald Trump being the level of narcissist that he is can't be understated, such as why we see these psychologists taking to the street. I mean, really think about that. Psychologists, first of all, the APA waived this 1964 Goldwater Rule because they felt like they had a duty to free up all 3,500 of their members, psychologists, to allow them to speak very frankly about what they believe they can ascertain from any videos of Donald Trump. That's the first thing. And now you have this march from the group Duty to Warn, they're screaming at the top of their lungs to try to let America know that we have a president who is causing America to suffer. And I think that's one of the most important distinctions there, right? So narcissism has a way of affecting the people around it more so than the individual suffering by themselves. It causes suffering around them. And we see now that when you have a president of the United States who is as narcissistic as Donald Trump, he has the ability to inflict massive pain onto other people, either out of sheer desire or because, according to Michelle Gollan, a lack of empathy. Donald Trump does not care about anybody else but Donald Trump. We could just cut to the chase, right? And I think one of the key components of being a leader, of being the president of the United States, is being able to pause and set your interests aside to feel the empathy of the people that you serve. Donald Trump is utilizing the White House to serve him. He has zero concern about serving other people. And while that may sound cliche, it is best personified by how he is not able to take down, he's not able to take criticism, he's willing to disrupt any part of the government. He is willing to disrupt any part of the government in order to satisfy his narcissism. He will fire anybody who disagrees with him. He will fire anyone who gets more spotlight than him. Consider that. Think about every person who for a moment got more attention than Donald Trump, and you will see that Donald Trump shortly thereafter fired that individual. And that is destabilizing. That has the ability to put the United States uniquely in a vulnerable position in a situation where this could backfire in a very spectacular and dangerous way. And that's why these psychologists, I believe firmly, that's why they've taken to the streets and decided to call for the impeachment of Donald Trump based on his mental health condition, the extent to which he is a narcissist, such that he is causing pain intentionally on the American people just to satisfy his narcissism. This is who they elected. You know, this is who, and I'm surprised that people couldn't see this before some psychologists had to point this out. I mean, some things should just be common sense, right? Some things don't require psychoanalysis. Some things you can just look at Donald Trump and realize that everything about his life has been to service himself and never to be a public servant. And everything about his life has been to service his ego. And now we have that type of disorder in the White House. And again, this is not to shame anyone else who's dealing with any type of mental health disorder, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that the man who has the most power in the world is there to please no one but himself at the expense of everyone around him. That should terrify us even more than his agenda right now. His agenda is downright terrifying, but his disorder, his narcissism should terrify us because of to what extent he's willing to go to satisfy it. We'll be back right after this.